My sister said my autistic kids would ruin her wedding. Now she's infertile and suddenly wants to be their aunt again. I'm 38, and I've got twin boys who just turned 11. Both of them are on the autism spectrum, and let me tell you, my husband and I have poured everything we've got into building a stable, loving life for them. They're truly amazing kids, just need a little more patience and understanding than most people are used to. We've had our share of tough moments, meltdowns in the middle of stores, a school play that turned into a total train wreck, don't even get me started, and a constant uphill battle with the school system to make sure our boys get the support they need. But somehow, we've made it work. Growing up, my sister and I were insanely close. I'm talking finish each other's sentences kind of close. We swapped clothes, shared every secret, and were each other's ride or die for years. She was the very first person I called when I found out I was pregnant. And when she needed someone, whether it was a breakup or a job falling apart, I was always there. When my twins got diagnosed, I thought she was in it with me. She came over with a pan of lasagna and sat on the couch while I cried. I thought that meant something. But things started to change the second she met the guy she's married to now. That was about 5 years back. He comes from one of those wealthy, well-connected families that think their last name means something. His dad used to be on the city council ages ago, and for whatever reason, they act like that makes them local royalty. Slowly but surely, my sister started canceling plans with me and spending more and more time with his crowd. At first, it was just a dinner with his mom or some event his friends were throwing. But before long, every single weekend was about them. Every phone call turned into updates about his family and what they were up to. Even my boys noticed. They started asking why their aunt didn't come around anymore. I didn't have the heart to tell them the truth, so I lied. I told them she was just busy with work or traveling a lot. I hated doing that, but what was I supposed to say? That their aunt basically disappeared because her new man didn't want to be around kids who are different? Because that's exactly what it felt like. When she got engaged, I was honestly happy for her. I sent her flowers, wrote her a nice card, and even offered to help plan the wedding. She just gave me this strange look and mumbled something about thinking about it. She never brought it up again. I figured maybe she was just overwhelmed. I still went out and bought a dress, thinking surely I'd be invited in some way. That dress is still hanging in my closet, tags untouched. Then one day, I'm scrolling through Facebook, yes, I still use it, don't judge, and I'm hit in the face with a stream of photos from her wedding. A wedding I wasn't even invited to. Not only was I not in the bridal party, I wasn't even on the guest list. My husband wasn't invited. And my kids? Forget it. But there were my parents, our cousins, even some old high school friends she barely talks to anymore. Everyone was there. Everyone but us. I called her right away, not expecting her to pick up, but she did. When I asked what the hell happened, she started rambling and dodging before finally admitting her in-laws didn't want any disruptions. Apparently, she was worried my kids might make some people uncomfortable. She claimed she fought to include us but eventually gave in because she didn't want to deal with any drama on her big day. Like my children are walking disasters or something. I'll never forget where I was when she said that. I was standing in my kitchen, staring at this dumb magnet on the fridge she'd given me on her last vacation. It said Sisters Forever. I yanked it down while we were still on the phone and tossed it straight into the trash. After I hung up, I called my parents, assuming they'd be as upset as I was. But nope. They actually defended her. Told me sometimes people have to make hard choices and that I should try to see things from her perspective. My dad even had the nerve to say maybe it was for the best since weddings could be overstimulating for my sons anyway. As if they know better than me what my own kids can handle. As if we haven't spent years figuring out how to help them manage situations exactly like that. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't some one-off thing. They've always treated my boys differently. Like they weren't quite part of the family. Less excitement over birthdays. Fewer gifts. They gave my nephew a drum set when he turned 4, a freaking drum set, but when it came to my boys, it was always educational toys to help with their development. They'd take my niece on fun outings like the zoo, but tell me maybe my sons wouldn't enjoy that kind of thing. That was it. I blocked every single one of them. Changed my number. We were already planning on moving for a better home layout to suit the boys' needs, but that whole situation just lit a fire under us. My husband backed me 100%. Honestly, I think he was even angrier than I was. He's never meshed with my family anyway, they always looked down on him for being a carpenter, like working with your hands isn't respectable enough. We moved and started fresh. Found a support group for parents of autistic kids and made real friends through it, people who actually get it. Our neighbors are the kind who invite us to backyard barbecues and don't blink an eye if one of the boys needs headphones or a quiet space for a bit. Just good, decent people who treat my kids like what they are, kids. That was more than 2 years ago. And honestly, I thought that part of my life was over. I'd see the occasional post through mutuals, but I'd just scroll past. I heard through the grapevine that my sister started trying for a baby right after the wedding. Good for her, I thought. Let her build the picture-perfect little family she's always wanted. Then yesterday, completely out of nowhere, my sister showed up on my doorstep with our parents right behind her. They were all carrying gift bags and wearing these overly cheerful fake smiles. First thing I asked was how the hell they found our address. They completely sidestepped the question. And that's creepy, by the way. We're unlisted, and none of our friends would have given it out without checking with me first. So yeah, either they hired someone or got real sneaky. Of course, my sister immediately started crying. That's always her move. She said she missed me, missed the boys. My mom jumped in with some speech about how they'd been doing a lot of reflecting and realized they made a mistake. My dad just stood there shifting awkwardly like he used to when he didn't want to tell us no as kids. And then my sister drops a bomb. She tells me that for the past 2 years, she and her husband have been trying to get pregnant with zero luck. They've done every treatment, seen multiple specialists, even gone through 2 rounds of IVF. Nothing's worked. And now, suddenly, she's rethinking what family really means. Her words, not mine. It sounded like she was reading off a sympathy card. She kept talking about how hard it's been, how her in-laws are pressuring them to continue the family name. Meanwhile, I'm just standing there, staring. My mom's nodding like it all makes perfect sense, my dad is inspecting our porch light like it's the most fascinating thing he's ever seen, and my sister's going on about how she's had some grand realization about what matters in life. That's when I told them exactly what I was thinking. That the only reason they're standing here now is because her perfect family plan didn't work out, and they're trying to slide back into ours like nothing happened. That they had no problem cutting us out when it was inconvenient, when my boys didn't fit the mold. But now that she can't have her own kids, suddenly mine are acceptable? Suddenly we're family again? My dad tried to cut in, probably to feed me some garbage about how that wasn't fair. But I wasn't done talking. I told them flat out that my kids aren't emotional support animals they can just abandon and come back to when it's convenient. They're human beings, real people, with feelings that were genuinely hurt when they were treated like problems to be avoided. I reminded them how we used to have Sunday dinners every week, like clockwork. And how, right after my sister started dating her now husband, those invitations suddenly dried up. Just vanished. That's when my mom started crying, saying I was being cruel and that they'd learned their lesson. My sister just stood there, stunned, like I'd physically slapped her. Honestly? I was close to it. She kept pushing this gift bag toward me like it was some kind of peace offering, as if some expensive toy could undo everything. I could already see part of it sticking out of the top, one of those flashy, noisy toys that would completely overwhelm one of my boys and probably lead to a meltdown. It was like they didn't remember anything about them. Not even the basics. I told them to get the hell out and take their guilt-ridden gifts with them. Then I slammed the door shut. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the lock turned. But they didn't leave empty-handed, they just dumped the bags on the porch. I tossed them in the garage later. My husband heard the noise and came downstairs. I filled him in on everything. He hugged me and said I did the right thing. But now? I don't know. I keep second-guessing myself. Here's the thing, over the years, the boys have occasionally brought up their grandparents and their aunt. Not all the time, but enough that I know they haven't forgotten. And part of me wonders, am I holding on to bitterness at the cost of depriving my sons of family? Am I keeping them from something meaningful just because I'm still angry? But then the other part of me, the one that remembers the wedding, the silence, the rejection, thinks letting them back into our lives would only set my kids up for more hurt later. What happens if my sister miraculously gets pregnant after all? Will she cut us out again once she has what she really wanted? Will my parents go back to acting like my boys are less than? I haven't told the kids about the visit. Thankfully, they were over at a friend's house when it happened. I'd only been home because I'd swapped a work shift at the last minute. Talk about timing. Honestly, I'm grateful they weren't there to see any of it. I keep wondering, am I the one being unreasonable? Should I have at least heard them out, for my kids' sake? Update, wow. I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thanks to everyone who commented, even if my inbox is now completely wrecked. That said, a few people seem to misunderstand some things, so let me clear them up. First, my boys aren't severely autistic. Yes, they have sensory sensitivities and sometimes struggle with reading social cues, but with the right preparation, they do just fine at events like weddings. They've been to parties and school events without any issues. One of them is super quiet, he'll usually just sit and play his Switch. The other one is more active, but if you explain expectations clearly, he follows the rules. They're not disruptive. Unless your definition of disruptive is any child who isn't a statue. Second, For those saying maybe your family really has changed, you didn't see the look on my sister's face when she talked about their fertility problems. That moment wasn't about reconnecting with us. It was about desperation. About not getting what she wanted. It reminded me of when we were kids, and I'd get a toy she didn't have, same jealous look, just grown-up context. Third, no, they didn't apologize. Not once. Not to me, not to my husband, not about how their actions hurt the boys. Everything they said was about their struggle, their feelings, their regrets. Nothing about the damage they caused. Nothing about excluding us from a major family milestone. Just a lot of vague "we miss you" and "this has been hard" talk. Fourth, someone asked about my husband's side of the family. They live on the other side of the country, so we're not super close day to day. But they do video calls on holidays, send birthday cards, and most importantly, they've never been weird about the boy's diagnosis. That alone makes a world of difference. And fifth, to the person who messaged me accusing me of using my kid's autism as an excuse to be bitter, go take a long walk off a short pier. You have zero idea what we've gone through. Anyway, a lot has happened since I posted. My sister hasn't stopped texting. At first, it was more guilt-tripping and crying emojis. Now she's turning mean. Accusing me of punishing her for one mistake and being petty. One mistake? They cut us off, excluded my kids from her wedding, disappeared for 2 years, and only showed back up when she couldn't have her own children. That's not one mistake, that's a pattern. She even sent this bizarre 2 a.m. message saying she's always dreamed of being an aunt and envies my motherhood journey. Who says stuff like that? It felt scripted. Hollow. Fake. This is the same person who used to ask me to keep the boys in a separate room when she visited because their stimmying made her uncomfortable. The same person who once asked if they'd ever be able to live on their own when they were 4 years old. 4. As if that's a normal thing to expect of any child, let alone neurodivergent ones. My parents called, too. I didn't answer. I figured it was more of the same. They left a voicemail saying they wanted to meet somewhere neutral to talk like grown-ups. Apparently, they changed their phone numbers to get around the block I'd put on their old ones. That alone tells me they're still pulling the same manipulative crap as always. I told my husband everything. He's still just as done with them as I am. He reminded me that when we first got the boy's diagnosis, my parents didn't try to learn anything about autism, they just sent us sketchy articles about cures and recommended diets instead of offering real support. I'd almost forgotten about that. Or the time my mom loudly whispered to a waitress that my son wasn't being rude, he's just autistic, like it was some shameful confession. That memory still makes my stomach turn. And of course, my sister always had that condescending tone after the diagnosis. She'd say things like, "Wow, having twins must be so hard now," in this fake, pitying voice. Then she'd follow it up with questions like, "Do you think they'll ever be independent?" Again, they were 4. Who even asks that? I'm still trying to figure out what, if anything, I should tell the boys. One of them actually found a gift bag I thought I'd hidden and asked where it came from. I told him it was from an old friend and put it away. I hated lying, but what else was I supposed to say? Oh, it's from the people who ghosted you for years and now want back in because their life didn't turn out how they planned? No thanks. The truth is, the boys have been doing really well lately. They're thriving. I'm not about to let anyone disrupt that just to give someone else a clean conscience. Some of you asked if I'd consider therapy with them. Maybe one day. But right now? I'm still sorting through my own emotions. My husband suggested we take a short family trip next month, just to clear our heads. There's a cabin spot by the lake a few hours away. The boys went there once on a school trip and absolutely loved it. That's sounding better by the day. Oh, and one more weird thing. Yesterday, I got a Facebook friend request from one of my mom's old friends. Someone I haven't spoken to in years. I can't prove anything, but I've got a pretty good hunch they're trying to get information through other people now. I hit ignore and didn't look back. I might post another update if something major happens. But for now, I'm just focusing on the people who actually show up for us. The ones who've been consistent. My real family. Update 2, it's been about a week since all this started and, well, things just keep happening. I wasn't planning to post again this soon, but I need somewhere to vent. First of all, thank you to everyone who left thoughtful, supportive comments and suggestions. And to the handful of people who called me bitter, yeah, you're right. I am. Wouldn't you be? And for the record, no, I haven't opened a single one of the gifts they left. Before writing this update, I figured I'd finally go check those gift bags they left. They were still sitting untouched in the garage. But before we get to that, on Tuesday, my sister showed up at my job. Just walked in like she had every right to be there. I work part-time at a small office, quiet, low-key, nothing dramatic, and there she was, waltzing in during my shift. I still have no idea how she even found out where I work, which, frankly, is creeping me out more and more by the day. I stepped outside with her because I didn't want to cause a scene in front of my coworkers. I was absolutely furious, but I kept my voice down since we were standing in the parking lot and people could see us. She launched into this whole speech, clearly rehearsed, about how she's been doing a lot of soul searching. Yes, those were her actual words. Then she started going on about how learning she might never be able to have kids has really put things in perspective. She followed that up by whispering something about how her husband has evolved and how he views children with special needs. And yes, she said it in a weird whisper, like it was some shameful secret she was revealing. I just stood there, staring at her, thinking, is this some kind of monologue she's practicing for a therapist? Because it sure didn't feel like she was talking to me. She kept glancing at her phone the entire time, something she's always done when she's lying. I recognized it from when we were teenagers and she'd bail on plans with some made-up excuse. Then she got to the real reason she showed up. Apparently, her husband's family is hosting some big reunion in a few months, and she wants to take us, me and the boys, so she can show them what real family looks like. Her words. She literally said she wanted to demonstrate how amazing special kids can be. That's when it hit me, this wasn't about rebuilding a relationship. This was about her trying to impress her in-laws. My boys weren't family to her in that moment, they were props. Something to put on display so she could look like a caring, selfless person. It was like we were her emotional backup plan now that her first option, having her own kids, hadn't worked out. I told her I had to get back to work and walked away. As I turned, she shouted after me that I need to stop living in the past, which is rich coming from someone who only showed up because her perfect little future fell apart. I was shaking for the rest of my shift. My boss noticed and, thankfully, let me leave early. Here's the thing, I might have considered, maybe, letting them back in if they'd shown even a shred of understanding about what they did wrong. But that hasn't happened. Not once. They still treat my boys like they're a cause, or a burden, or something that needs to be handled instead of just kids who deserve to be treated like everyone else. It's still all about their feelings, their struggles. Then yesterday, my mom called from a new number, and I picked up without realizing it was her. She started off saying my sister was heartbroken and that I was being too harsh. I asked her, point blank, do you think it was wrong to exclude us from the wedding? She didn't answer right away. Just mumbled something about how some situations are complicated and you do what seems best at the time. I kept pushing. Finally, she admitted she didn't think a wedding was the right environment for children with issues. Yep. Her exact words. Not your boys. Not our grandsons. Just children with issues. Like they're a problem to be managed instead of people with names and feelings. I hung up. I'm done. Done with their excuses, their half-hearted justifications, and their cowardly way of never saying what they really mean. They're embarrassed by my sons, and the only reason they're crawling back now is because they need something. I see that clearly now. After that call, I decided it was time to deal with those gift bags. My husband had taken the boys out for ice cream after school, so I had a little time alone. I opened them one by one, and just like I expected, they were full of generic toys, stuff that was clearly bought with no thought. Toys that were way too young for my boys or didn't match their interests in the slightest. There was even a toy with flashing lights and loud noises, the exact kind of thing that would completely overwhelm one of my sons. At the bottom of one bag, I found a card. No words inside, just a check. A significant amount, too. But no note, no message. Just money. As if they could buy their way back into our lives. I ripped it in half and threw it in the trash. We've made it just fine without their support for 2 years. We don't need their money, especially if it comes with strings attached. Later that night, I sat down with the boys and explained, gently, that sometimes people in a family don't treat each other the way they should. That's why they hadn't seen their grandparents or aunt in a while. I didn't get into the details or try to turn them against anyone. I just told them the truth in a way they could understand. One of them asked if they'd ever see them again. I said, maybe someday, but not right now. They seemed to accept that. Honestly, more easily than I expected. I think I've been carrying the weight of this rift way more than they have. One of them remembered that Grandma used to make good cookies. The other one said he didn't like how Grandpa's house smelled. And that was it. They asked if they could go play video games, and we moved on. And honestly, that felt like the right way to handle it. Then today, my sister posted some vague nonsense on social media. Something about forgiving people who don't know how to accept love or whatever. Of course, several extended family members jumped into the comments with heart emojis and "so proud of you" messages. So now, I guess I'm the villain in their version of this story. Fine by me. If protecting my kids makes me the bad guy in their eyes, I'll wear that label with pride. Update 3. I really wasn't planning on writing again this soon, but things have escalated, and I need to get this off my chest. Remember how I mentioned that vague post my sister made? Well, turns out she's been posting a lot more than that. One of the few mutual friends who hasn't picked a side yet sent me screenshots. She's out here painting herself as some heartbroken aunt who just wants to reconnect with her nephews, while casting me as a bitter, spiteful mother using my kids as weapons. And she's even using a hashtag now, #anti-love. I couldn't make this up if I tried. What's worse? She's sharing personal details about my sons. Their ages. That they're autistic. Even old photos. All of it, posted for sympathy from people who don't know the real story. My kids didn't ask to be part of her public pity parade. I'm seriously considering legal action. Because this feels like a complete violation of their privacy. Of our boundaries. And I am not okay with it. But the worst part? It came yesterday. I got a call from the boys' school. My parents had shown up there. Unannounced. They told the office they were the boys' grandparents and that they just wanted to surprise them at lunch. Thankfully, the school has solid security policies, and since my parents aren't on the approved pickup list, the staff called me immediately. I've never been so grateful for those protocols. I called them as soon as I got the news. I absolutely lost it. Told them if they ever pulled something like that again, I'd file a restraining order without hesitation. My dad tried to defend it, said they just wanted to see the boys and didn't think it was a big deal. A big deal? Showing up unannounced at a school? In what world is that normal behavior? My mom got on the phone and, surprise, started crying again. Said they were desperate. She said they were desperate and didn't know what else to do. I told her exactly what else she could do, respect my boundaries, something none of them have ever really done. Then I hung up and called a close friend of mine. I needed advice. I asked her what steps I'd need to take if this escalated and I had to get a restraining order. I ended up leaving work early again to meet with the school principal. Thankfully, she was incredibly kind and understanding. She assured me they'd add a note to the boys' files about unauthorized visitors. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was in some kind of custody battle, except the people trying to insert themselves have no legal claim to my kids in the first place. Then, later that night, around 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and froze. It wasn't my sister. It wasn't my parents. It was him. Her husband. The same guy who didn't think my sons were appropriate for his wedding. The same man who didn't want us there because my kids weren't perfect enough to fit the image he wanted to present to his precious family. I didn't open the door. I just said loud enough for him to hear, "You need to leave. Now. Or I'm calling the police." He didn't say a word. He just slid an envelope under the door and walked away. Inside was a typed letter. Formal, sterile, like something written by a lawyer or a PR assistant. He said he wanted to apologize for any misunderstandings and claimed he'd done a lot of growing since getting married. There was also another check larger than the first one. He'd written for the boys' future in the memo line. Like we need his money. Like his check could undo years of silence, exclusion, and subtle cruelty. The whole letter was full of generic platitudes about family unity and new beginnings, but not a single word about what he actually did. Not one sentence about excluding us from the wedding. Nothing about my kids. No acknowledgement of pain. Just vague, corporate-sounding phrases. I showed it to my husband. He took one look, rolled his eyes, and said, "He still doesn't get it, does he?" And he's right. They don't. Honestly, I'm tired. Worn down. I feel like they're just trying to exhaust me emotionally, hoping that if they keep showing up, texting, sending money, I'll eventually cave just to make it stop. But I won't. The boys have noticed something's been off. They're not little kids anymore, they can tell when I'm stressed. So I sat them down and reassured them. I told them that no matter what, we're safe, we're together, and they don't need to worry. I explained, simply, that sometimes adults have disagreements that take time to sort out. I didn't go into detail. I just wanted them to feel secure. They seemed okay afterward. But it kills me that they even have to be okay with something like this. My husband suggested we start documenting everything just in case things keep escalating. So now I'm keeping a log. Every call, every message, every voicemail, every creepy social media post, screenshots, timestamps, saved emails. It feels paranoid, but what else do you do when someone shows up at your job and your kid's school uninvited? For now, I'm focusing on protecting my family while keeping my distance. I blocked my sister's new accounts. Changed all my passwords just in case. And I double-checked that every emergency contact for the boys is someone we actually trust. Still, I keep wondering, am I handling this the right way? How do I shield my sons from this mess without making them feel like I'm hiding something? How do I protect them and be honest? And is it really so wrong to think that some relationships just aren't fixable? No matter how much soul searching someone claims they've done? Update 4. It's been a few weeks now, and finally, things have calmed down. That's why I haven't written anything. But I figured I owed a final update to the folks who followed this whole wild journey and offered support along the way. First, thank you. Seriously. Knowing there were strangers out there, people who truly got it, meant more than I expected. It helped keep me grounded. After the incident at the school, I reached out to a lawyer, through a friend, and had them help me draft a formal cease and desist letter. We sent copies to both my parents and my sister. It's not legally binding like a restraining order, but it creates a clear paper trail. It stated that any further uninvited contact at our home, my work, or the boys' school would result in legal action. To my surprise, it worked. My sister stopped posting about us, at least publicly. No more cryptic forgiveness posts, no more hashtags. No more showing up. My parents sent a short email acknowledging the letter and saying they need time to process everything. Fine. Let them take all the time they want. I'm not waiting around for them to come to their senses anymore. In the meantime, my husband and I finally took the trip we talked about. We rented a cabin by a lake, unplugged from everything, and just existed. The boys loved it. They collected rocks, spotted deer, made up games in the woods, and learned how to skip stones across the water. It was peaceful. It was quiet. It felt like healing. I've done a lot of thinking since then about family. What it means. What it doesn't. I used to believe that family was automatic. That being related by blood meant something unbreakable. That no matter what happened, you just stick it out because that's what you do. But that's not true. Family is who shows up. Family is who chooses to stay. Family is the people who love you without conditions or checklists. It's the people who really try, to understand you. And more importantly, your kids. I don't know if I'll ever speak to my sister again. Or my parents. Maybe one day, if they can actually demonstrate change and accept my sons as they are, not as some version they wish they were. But I'm not holding my breath. I'm not living my life in a holding pattern waiting for people who already showed me where their priorities lie. Someone left a comment on one of my earlier updates that stuck with me. They said, "Your real obligation is to the family you choose, not the one you were born into." That's exactly how I feel. Right now, we're just living. Quietly. Fully. Surrounded by people who show up without being asked, who accept us without hesitation. We've got neighbors who smile at my boys, not stare. Friends who invite us to their homes and keep earplugs in a drawer, just in case. A little community that feels like real family. I probably won't post again unless something major happens. But to everyone who's followed along, supported me, messaged kind words, or even just listened, thank you. You helped more than you know.